We want to welcome everyone out tonight to our Educational Disruptor series. My name is Brett Taylor. Just to give you a little bit of background about what this series is, we started this series last year. I am the program lead for our Educational Entrepreneurship program. And when we started Educational Entrepreneurship, we wanted to start this program that was focused on the intersection of people that were doing entrepreneurship and people that were trying to change education. And when we started recruiting for this program, we thought all we got to do is find the places where those people meet, and then we can recruit them. And what we found was in Sacramento, there weren't a lot of places for people that had those kinds of interests to meet. So one of the things we decided to do was to create one. And that's what this series is really about. We bring in experts in the field of educational entrepreneurship, people who are doing really different and exciting things that we usually don't see around education, and we talk to them and we pick their brains. And during that time, we also shamelessly promote our programs. So that I've been told we have to do that tonight. So if you have any questions about our master's degree in educational entrepreneurship, organizational learning and effectiveness, or our doctoral degree in organizational learning and leadership, organizational effectiveness and leadership, I'm learning, Rod. Feel free to talk to us in the back. But I'm really excited to introduce Johnny Arguelles tonight and to have a discussion with him about the work that he's done at the San Joaquin County Office of Education. I can tell you we had a phone call last week, and I am hoping, we talked for about an hour and a half, and we could have gone for 3 or 4. So I'm really hoping I asked the right questions to get the best information.
I had a lot of caffeine that day,
okay,
so
that's
I'm
good.
going to get I ate food now. It's probably not going to be as good, but we'll see.
That's good. So before I kind of give I don't want to give a long bio. I want Johnny to be able to talk a little bit, but just to give you a little bit of background, Johnny is the director of Cedar Systems at the San Joaquin County Office of Education. He's also the founder of the Code Stack Academy. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight too. But what's really exciting is Johnny is doing work that we usually see in a private software development tech company, and he's doing it in a county office of education. And that's the kind of innovation we don't see a lot in education. So we want to find out how he's pulling this off. And we also want to give some time tonight after I'm done talking to have the audience be able to ask questions. So as we're talking tonight, if there's something we don't touch upon, if there's something that we miss, have that question ready because we have him here. He can't leave right now. So we want to get as much as we can out of him while he's here. So before I get started, let's welcome Johnny to our Educational Disruptor series. So to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how it kind of led you to this position at Cedar Systems?
Okay. So I just want to start off saying, so I work at the County Office of Education. It's a public education agency. I think a lot of you from the people I spoke with are in that same boat where we work in the public side of things. But where I started my career is more in the coding aspect. So I would say if people ask me, I tell them 80% software engineer, 20% public service, public servant, if you will, or public educator. Because that's where I feel, that's my passion. And I feel like that's where, I think that was kind of the strength, the ambition behind Cedar Systems, which is the department I work at. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background about Cedar. So we're a fairly large software engineering group. That's our livelihood. And we've been around since 2001, so 17 years. 2001, 2002 fiscal year is when I started. I was the third person hired in the department. It was just one other person and an admin assistant. My predecessor, Rick Cornish, who was kind of the visionary for EdJoin, which was our first project that we launched. So I came in there. Let me go even before that. So prior to working at the county office, I was doing computer stuff. So I was working as a coder, running a database for a law firm here in Stockton as an intern. And I knew it was very formal. They all went to McGeorge School of Law too, by the way. all the attorneys there. So I know a lot about the credibility of that school. So I was working there, and I was doing tech stuff. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but it just wasn't as exciting for me. So I thought, I want to do something different. I want to go to Silicon Valley. I want to start working where the hustle and bustle is. I want to get on with the startup. I want to become a millionaire really young. And so I went out there and I started looking for jobs, and I found a couple of guys out there that had just started a company fresh with the concept, and they hired me as a developer and brought me on as a co-founder and helped them build a platform for doing. This was in 2001, 2000. Oh, this is in 2000. Oh, excuse me. This is 98, 99. 99, yeah, 98, 99 is when I started there. So we started building some software based on their background. They kind of took me under their wing to do online transactions for credit card processing. And so, back in 2000, the internet only accounted for roughly 2% of all transactions, which is probably the opposite now, right? Most of us use our credit card online than any other place. But back then, it was just kind of getting traction. And so we had a way of doing the authorization with a credit card. And there was only one other competitor in the market at that time called CyberCash, was no longer in existence. And they owned the market, but their product was very expensive, and it required a lot of equipment, basically a server per merchant. And we figured out a way to do a platform that could support 100 merchants per server. And was much more cost effective, roughly like $300 setup kind of deal. So it was solid technology. And to top it off, when credit card accounted for 2% of transactions, in 2000 it accounted for approximately 60% of all fraud. So it was running rampant online because there was no kind of protection, no kind of detection. And security was not a priority back then. So we figured out a way to do some fraud detection in the transactions as well, to alert merchants of possible fraud, which was pretty breakthrough. Was a pretty big breakthrough in my opinion at that time. And so I thought we had great product. I thought, oh man, this is it. I hit it. Like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna become millionaires. And getting funding was an interesting task. So when you have 3 young guys, I think, date myself. I think I was 19 at the time. Trying to go to people for money when you're 19 years old and you have not a whole lot going on for you was always challenging, I found out. And then the guys that I work with came from another startup where they had venture capitalists who invested in their company and basically ran it to the ground. They took the best ideas from a bunch of companies that did the same thing. So they were like, we're not messing with venture capitalists, we're doing strictly angel investors. We're gonna do that. And so that was a route we took, and we got a little bit of funding off the ground and just was hustling. And so I would be there till 8 o'clock at night, drive back to Stockton, get home at midnight, go to mixers, go to all these professional development groups that they had, meetups that they had, as part of special interest groups, part of Chamber of Commerce, or all these hubs in the Bay Area, trying to create partnerships to resell our stuff. Cold calling like crazy, small businesses. Hey, you guys interested? We get chewed off. They chew me out, hang up in my face. But you kind of develop a thick skin. I used to hurt my feelings the first few months, and then after a while, it's like, oh, okay, next one, just go on, just make it a process. But we did that, and we ran out of startup money. We had very little success. Trying to convince these small businesses to give you $300 was a lot more challenging than I thought. And convince them that the internet's the next thing they can make money for their storefront was challenging as well. So long story short, it was a failed attempt, but it was probably the best learning experience I ever had in my life in terms of career-wise. So I thought, you know what? My mom at the time, who's here, was working for the San Joaquin County Office of Education as the director of migrant education. She's like, hey, they're hiring a coder to build web apps here at the county office if you're interested. And I'm like, yeah, I'll check it out. And I was kind of done already with that. And so I looked at it and I was like, wow, they're gonna pay me that much money for doing this. This is like double what I was making in the Bay Area with the startup. So I took the job and I was like, okay, I've got a job in the public sector now. It's, the whole rat race thing is over. Now I'm just gonna kick back, collect a paycheck, write some code and be home at 5 o'clock. This is kind of going to be my life for a while. And so when I started working there, I met with the superintendent, and he was like, hey, listen, we have some projects that we want you to do, but we're only going to fund you for 2 years, so you're going to have to figure out how to make your own money to support your program, because we're subsidizing this out of the general fund, and that's there's always budget cuts happening, and teachers are getting peak slips. I can't justify hiring some sort of program where I'm funding coders. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to try this. And so we started with EdJoin and working with HR and building that out. How many of you familiar with EdJoin? All right, so pretty much most of the room. So EdJoin is an online recruitment job posting board. It's the most predominantly used system in the country for jobs. Our traffic is average between 10 to 15 million visitors a week. The next closest one is in the couple 100,000. So we are way ahead of anybody in terms of traffic and teacher recruitment. Almost every district in the state, actually every district in the state does use it for recruitment. They may use other platforms for the filtering, the vetting, the hiring stuff. But EdJoin has been around. That was our first product that we worked on, and we partnered with CSESA and really built that out and built some connections there. And then we started getting into working with other programs within our own county. So everything started with our own county office. SACE, our special ed system. How many of you have heard of that in the room? Okay, so SACE is the most predominantly used special ed system in the state. We have over 200,000 users that log in every day, work on IEPs, generate reports, monitor, track their special ed data for their district. We have 40,000 IEPs that get generated a day in SACE, which is pretty incredible. And we have, our dashboard page that kind of has all your the information for your account has 10,000 views a second. So heavily used system, and that all grew from a homegrown system that we built for our own county. And we have a bunch of other products that we do that we'll probably get into later. But that's kind of the nutshell. I would just say, to kind of recap my background, I would say while I was working at the county office, I went to school and finished my degree, because back then a degree was essential for a coding job. Today, not so much for that particular field because there's just a huge shortage right now. But got that done, went and just took my experience that I had. And the biggest difference I saw was that when you work for a public education agency and you're calling other public agencies to ask them about how they're doing this, it's a whole different type of respect, and I would just say they see you more as a colleague than a salesperson. So I'm not gonna lie, I took advantage of that. It was kind of my foot in the door. Right when I call them, they would be like, "Hey, I'm calling from San Joaquin County Office of Education." "Oh, how are you doing?" Like, "Oh, they didn't hang up." But coming from that, and then them looking at their budgets and how much they have budgeted for services to make their departments better, programs better. In education, a lot, when you deal with these budgets, if you don't spend it, if you don't use it, you lose it. So a lot of times there would be towards the end of the year, I knew that was my time to propose some ideas to programs. Say, "Hey, how are you doing this?" "Oh man, you're sending faxes. You're just doing this all through email manual. You're doing Excel spreadsheet." "No, we could build an app that will have everybody just log in and you'll collect all this data." So when you start spitting these ideas out to educators, it kind of expands their horizon in terms of what they think the possibilities are, and you're in. And then you can build some software. And what we looked at was, okay, could this scale? Could other districts in our county, we just focus on our county, benefit from this? Is something we can offer to everyone? And that was kind of the mindset, but then things started happening where it became bigger, where we started getting inquiries from other counties, other districts around the state, and it just blew up at that point. And so I think that was the point where we thought, okay, we're onto something. There's definitely a void in public education and technology. And I think the same could be said for every public sector, honestly. When I talk to folks that work in other sectors in the public, there's always a gap between leveraging technology and the work processes, the workflow, and we were kind of that bridge in education for developing software that could make the jobs easier for teachers and administrators, and that was really we kind of found our niche, and it just kind of took off from there.
So maybe talk about, you started talking about how that's kind of scaled. You went from this small internal project team to something that has millions of users. So maybe talk about some of the things that you do now at Cedar Systems and how a lot of this got started getting beyond just your internal projects.
Yeah, so I mean, really, when we started, and technology was a lot different back in those days, in the early 2000s, technology was a lot different. So when we hired developers, we hired people who just knew how to code, and they would have to do coding from top to bottom, meaning they would have to design the interface, they would have to create the database, they would have to do all the coding and all the bells to make it function a certain way. And so that was what our model was back then. But I think one of the biggest contributors to our growth and our success is not just the connections that we've made, because obviously that's a big part of it. It's not even the timing, But I always thought, and I was just talking to somebody about this. I always thought a lot of our success had to do with the timing of it all. But I've realized that's not the case either, because we still get approached with projects regularly and new conceptual ideas that I thought, oh man, that could be a big winner. There is a huge void for that right now. And maybe we just don't have the resources at the time to tackle it, or without compromising the service that we have already existing with districts. So that's always kind of the balance, but timing is part of it, but it definitely wasn't the final thing. I think for us, what really made us successful, in my opinion, is, like I said, I'm an 80% coder and 20% public educator. And
I think you were 70-30 before, so
I already changed it.
In the last few minutes, you've gone more.
We're gonna have to check the tape. I swear I'm 80. So I think for me, knowing that that's my passion, I think one of the biggest challenges in the kind of field that I'm in, related to software engineering and to coding, is really recruitment and retention of quality engineers, especially coming in the public sector. We cannot compete with the salaries in the private sector. We just can't, and we have a lot of red tape related to policies, HRs. You want to give people a raise, you have to do, there's a whole process where they do comparisons to other positions in the organization that are similar, and it's just the flexibility is just not there. In that regard, in terms of recruitment and retention of quality engineers. And so that's always a challenge, but fortunately for us, like Rick Wentworth, who was the visionary for our program, and I don't know if he saw this in his roadmap about us becoming this successful, but he was a huge supporter in terms of just bending the rules to know that we work differently. It takes money to make money, is what we always tell him. And our current superintendent, James Musalim, is very supportive. Without him, we wouldn't have the success we have today, for sure. And he's a big proponent of STEM and education, which is the code school, which is what we opened up to, is something we'll talk about a little bit later. So the challenges. So related to technology piece. Because I know what I like and what drives me, what my passion in is ultimately coding, and so. For me, I love working at a place where we're always adapting to the latest technologies. We're always doing professional development. Sorry, I told him I wasn't going to hit my mic, and I did it. Won't happen again. Where we're always trying to kind of stay on the bleeding edge. That's fun to me. I can't wait till new stuff comes out. Some people are not wired that way. Some people are happy when something that they know and that they're expert in. And I like just moving on to the next best thing, because it's out there, it's new. It's better for a reason. It's people would just don't want to switch for the sake of switching. They switch because it has some added value. It does something better. What used to take me 20 lines of code, I can now do in 3 lines of code with this new platform or this new technology. And so that was something that we've been committed to from the beginning. We do a lot of reworking of our applications. A lot of people don't know. It's under the hood. we're re-architecting, re-engineering, we're leveraging cloud services, we're leveraging AI, we're doing all these things behind the scenes that people don't know that we're actually doing. Bleeding edge stuff. Like the only people that can answer our questions are top people at Microsoft when we go to these events and rub shoulders with them. So we do a lot of professional development, various conferences. We go around the country talking to the most top engineers about these bleeding edge technologies, and it's fun. We love implementing it. And I've had people that have left our program that have come back taking a $30,000, $40,000 pay cut to come back. And we would post on social media, hey, we're over here talking to so-and-so, and they would post on their hashtag jealous, you know. But they're making good money, and I can't believe it. Like, you know, some of these guys are leaving these modern tech places where they have beer on tap and bring your dog to work and, you know, all these things, all these cool. I'm like, why would you want to come back and leave that? But it's just a different culture that we've established there that really makes it fun for the work that we do. And as a public agency, our incentive is not to make money. Our incentive is to provide quality software and quality service. And so, you know, even though re-architecting a system is not, from a business perspective, it's probably not the most cost-effective way if you want to allocate your money, because new stuff's going to continue to come out. You might want to wait a couple versions and say, you know what, we'll tackle that later. We'll just reskin it. We'll make it look pretty. We'll add some new pictures and make it look like something new. But really, under the hood, it's the same stuff. For us, no, we do it the right way, and I think that's really paid off for us because we do invest the time and resources. But to scale to that level, we have close to 70 engineers on staff, and so we're a big shot. We're probably the largest tech organization agency in the entire county in San Joaquin. I don't know of a bigger one, so there may be one, but I don't know of it. And we've been a big secret. You know, nobody's really known about the type of work we do, how big we've grown, the software that we touch. I'm sure everybody in the room is familiar with the school's dashboard, right? So we are the ones who built that. You know, we're behind the scenes, the e-template for the LCAP, developing the rubric, developing all these components. We're behind the scenes. We work a lot with the Department of Education, building a lot of these software applications that they need. Legislation that comes out, a lot of times we're written into the bill just because we've established a reputation. So, you know, when every single one of these pieces of legislation needs some sort of tracking component. They need some way to measure outcomes, to be able to analyze data, and we're the driving force behind a lot of that. To provide the infrastructure for collecting that information. And so I think of the trailer bill for the governor, he had about 22 line items for his educational budget, and we did all the technology for 6 of those 22. So and that's pretty significant, and we're realizing how much of an impact we're having in California. So I think technology, and I think the resources that we have at our disposal working at a county office has really made a huge impact on our success, for sure.
So talk a little more about if we have people in the audience who are entrepreneurs and would like to impact education, or we have people who are in education in the room. It seems like a lot of public sectors are set up, and corporations for that matter, are set up to keep the status quo and to do what needs to get done.
Right.
How do you do a lot of the work that you've been able to do? It sounds like you had a superintendent who believes in you and some other people along the way, but how can more of this kind of work happen within public sectors that maybe a lot of us in the room maybe think like, oh, that's nice, but we can't do that where we're at?
Well, I think it starts from the top for sure. So, you know, it's a risk. You know, there's going to be a financial risk that's going to be probably at the top. Somebody at the top is going to have to make that call to assume that financial risk, because you are, you know, it takes money to get this off the ground. You know, you could probably get away with it just hiring one or two developers as kind of a pilot group, but we get approached with projects to this day. That's why I said timing. I thought it was time, but timing is not it, because there are projects that we're considering doing that can have a huge impact that every district can leverage and would be more than happy to pay money for it, because they're probably spending a lot more doing this stuff manual. And so I think part of it is you have to, even though we're a public agency, our culture, our mentality in our department is we run like a private business. And so I think you need support from the top in terms of the financial piece, but you need somebody in there that has that drive, that determination to be competitive, because we are competing 100% with the private sector, no question. And so as a result, we have to do things that is out of our realm. For example, we have in our department a media team, and their whole function is marketing, developing videos, video production, social media. We have a social media team, does nothing but engaging in social media, posting content, trying to start conversation, working with, we have districts and entities that pay us to run their social media campaigns on their behalf, because it's a necessity, and it's one of those things where it's not hard work, it's just time consuming and it takes resources. But these are things that we had to do to stay engaged. We have a conference that we hold every year. How many of you been to the conference here? Anybody? No? Okay, you should go.
It's in San Diego.
Yeah. So this one's in Monterey, but last year was in San Diego.
Still pretty good.
We have, this will be our 12th conference, 12th annual conference. 1,200 attendees. It's sold out every year since we've had it. Huge turnout. It's a great. We don't make money off of it. It's at the end of the day, we end up paying a little bit, but not a huge amount of money. But at the end of the day, it's a huge venue for us to be talking to our users and collaborating, getting ideas, having keynotes there, really focus on the product. They're our users. They're on the front lines using the software on a daily basis, so their input is invaluable. And I would say, as far as our success, I'm kind of surprised at this, because I thought the status quo was, you listen to your customers and you respond to their needs. And apparently that, from what I've heard from a lot of the districts, that's not always the case in the private sector. And so for us, EdJoin, SACE, our SST, Beyond SST system, all these products that we build, we're the engineers. We're not the educators. We're not the ones that have the idea or know the best way to use it. We just know how to take the ideas and formulate it into some sort of software. So everything we do is collaborative, for sure, 100%. And all of our systems, they're community-based, meaning that everybody logs into one place. I did it. Everybody logs into one place and accesses the same functions, the same tools. And we've been doing this. This has been our model since we started. When we started EdJoin, when we started SACE, our model has always been everybody come to one place, log into one community-based system, and use it. And if there's something that's a problem, if there's something that you think could be better, communicate that to us. And there's a very high chance that everybody's going to reap the benefit of that one suggestion. And when you do a community-based system like that, which we are way ahead of our time when we started doing that stuff. It's called now, there's actually a term. We were doing it before the term was coined, which is now software as a service. We were doing software as a service before it was actually a term, software as a service. I even Googled it to find out. It came out like in 2004, and we were doing that since 2002, so we beat it by 2 years. But now it's a status quo, because now you have this, you don't have to install, you don't have to have a server, you don't have to run any of these stuff locally in your environment. So that was another roadblock that we had, because we had to go sell this concept to school districts and traditional IT departments that, hey, we have this great product, your districts can leverage this. All they have to do is log in. Well, where's the data going to reside? It's going to be in the cloud, or going to be on our data center with everybody else's. So it's all centralized. They're like, we want it on premise. And so there's because that's the mentality of a district. We want our data here, and to try to convince them that this is a better approach. And now it's the status quo. Now we can go in there. It's a much easier sell, because they understand. They're all using cloud now. They're using, even our counties, like they switched to Google Cloud Mail or Microsoft Mail or Microsoft Live or Google Docs. Like all this stuff is cloud-based now. It's not a server on-premise for Outlook anymore. Now we have it all cloud-based. So that's the status quo now, but we just happen to be ahead of that curve. And I think that was positive and negative. It was negative in the sense that we had to convince them of this, but it was positive in the sense that when you have a community-based system, to make an update or to make an improvement, you make it one place, one time, and everybody gets the benefits. Whereas when you have software like a traditional student information system, you're running your own version on your own site, at your own district office or data center, and now when there's updates, it's a process. And you're running a different version than this one and this one and that. No, there's one version for everybody.
Do you think that's one of the issues in public education with the public sector is there's a mindset issue in that, for example, the way that you run Cedar Systems, I know a lot of people in the public sector, and of course I've run systems through a lean startup design things that you do in entrepreneurship, but you kind of have a mindset like, well, we can't do that here. Right. Is that one of the big issues you think do you think there's more possibility to do things the way you've done things in these systems and people just aren't open to trying them out?
I'm trying to think of how to answer that. Okay, what's another way you could word that? I'm trying to think.
So just when you start working with these places and they kind of say, well, no, this is how we've always done things in schools.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, how did you go about changing that mindset? How did you convince people that they could do something different? Because I think that's one of the roadblocks we face in education, and not just education. A lot of your organizations, you can kind of, some of you might be in other organizations where you're like, okay, I'm not in education, but we face these same issues.
Yeah,
how do you do that?
That's been a challenge. I think it's easier now than it's ever been, for sure. I think that we have a changing workforce. I was at the Microsoft conference, and one of their VPs was doing a keynote, and he said, we're invested in the cloud, we're invested in mobile apps, we're invested in all these things because we did the research. We know the data. We know, he said by 2020, he goes, well, first of all, right, for the past year and a half to 2020, there's 10,000 retirees every day, and 10,000 people hitting retirement age every day. And millennials are coming up to the workforce, and he said by next year, they're going to make up 75 to 80% of the workforce will be millennials. So it's a definitely changing landscape in all sectors, for sure. As far as education goes, and trying to convince, people, I think that could be said for any public agency. When people are kind of set in their ways and they're comfortable and what they do and they know how to do it, they've learned how to be efficient with what they have. Anytime you go in there and try to tell them that there's another way or a better way, you're going to get pushback, especially from the people that have been there for a long time doing it that way. So that's something that we've had to deal with, and you just have to convince them and show them, get over that learning curve with them and provide the support they need. But I think credibility has a lot to do with it. And I think if we started early on, that was a much harder sell. But now that we've been around and people use our services, they know about the products we use, that makes that a little bit of an easier task to tackle.
What are some things happening at San Joaquin County Office of Education outside of Cedar Systems? What are some of the innovations happening throughout the county office?
Well, there's a lot of things happening. I wish I knew I was better educated in all of them, but I know we have. Ours is not the only group that does this kind of work. We have, we have a teachers college of San Joaquin, which is, I think they had over 1,000 graduates at this last one, that offer all kind of programs, and I think they're even now a doctorate program that they're partnering with UOP. We have we have the largest STEM program among county offices. We're very much invested, our superintendent is very much invested in STEM education, and for me that's like gold for me, because that's my realm. So we have we built a fab lab, which is a fabrication lab with hundreds of computers and all kinds of tools to get them involved in engineering for students. And in fact, last week there was, they had migrant camps over there, migrant ed students going over there building robots and coding and doing all these different things at a facility that is equal, if not better, than some of the ones in Silicon Valley. And so to give them that kind of exposure, I think is a great thing, because these are migrant students, so where are they going to have that kind of access? So we provide that stuff. And there's all these we're just cooking up a lot of things. We are working very closely with our STEM program We're working closer with them now because we are technology, they are, and it's just a good match, a good marriage between our two programs. So we're collaborating a lot with them, and you know, we did our Code Stack Academy, which is our software engineering school that we operate out of our program.
So why don't you talk more about Code Stack, how it's
Okay.
gotten started, and where you're going with that?
Yeah, so our superintendent, like I said, he's a strong proponent of STEM, and you know, we've been working. We've been training engineers for the last 15 years. You know, coding is, because of where we're geographically located in Stockton, and just where we can be with terms of salaries, how we can't really compete with the private sector. We've had to hire engineers, for the most part, entry-level coders, very little experience. So we've had to train them up to be productive members of the teams. And so we've already been doing this for years. And so now it was like, well, you know, some of them have moved on to bigger and better places. Some of them have stayed with us and are outstanding engineers. Like I said, we do a lot of professional development. So we're just like, you know, then this whole thing with the STEM, and then we've been working closely with the city, and it just felt like the right time to say, let's do something. You know, we have a lot of success building software. You know, our program has grown very big. We have all these resources. We have all these people that are experts. Let's leverage this for the community. Let's take these resources and do something good for the community. You know, Stockton has some economical issues and workforce development issues that they're trying to tackle, and you know, I think they have the largest population of commuters per capita in that region who have over a 90-minute commute, who work in the Bay Area, taking some of these jobs just to make a decent wage. So let's give them an opportunity to learn something that can give them a career, and that's coding, and it's the most in-demand job in the world for sure. And so, you know, every sector is impacted by it. It doesn't matter if you're in government, if you're in security, if you work in the military, it doesn't matter where you work. If you're in sports, software has turned that niche upside down. And so, who's the custodian of that infrastructure? It's the coders. So at that trajectory, you know, experts are saying for the next 50 years, it's still going to be in-demand job. The growth is 4 times more than any other sector. So we're a big proponent. I go around to the schools. I go to UOP. I do talks to students and tell them about the importance of you know, a career in coding and what opportunities exist. And it's just evolving. You know, I shared with the students at UOP. I spoke at the Mesa School of Engineering graduation, and I told them, look, these careers, nobody's heard of them. Right now, these are the most 5 sought after jobs in software engineering. These didn't exist 5 years ago. So, I mean, that's how times are changing. And so to be able to have those skill sets is just invaluable. You have all options. And especially, we have a partnership with Girls Who Code. Especially, there's a gender gap going on. You know, there's already a shortfall in coders and engineers in our country alone, and then the gender gap for women, it's even more despair. You know, I was watching 60 Minutes did a special on it about a month and a half ago, specifically on computer coding and the gender gap, and they said that women who know how to code are recruited like star athletes. I mean, they have options, and because everybody wants them, and there's just not enough of them. Because what they bring to the table, the way they, you know, the creativity and all the things that are involved with the job, everybody wants them, and so that's the world we live in right now, and we're trying to do our part, but it's you know, it's a moving target.
So Code Stack Academy is a year-long program?
Yeah, it's 11 months. It's a very intense program. So here's the thing: I've hired over 100 engineers in the last 10 years. When they come in, I'm going to know pretty much where their learning gaps are. You know, and every person that walks through those doors has a gap, and they're learning to make them job ready for the way our team functions. And we kind of follow the best practices from the big companies and what they do. That's kind of been our little secret sauce. We don't make the rules. We don't design this stuff. We look at what's Microsoft doing, what's Google doing, you know, what's Facebook doing, how does their stack look like, how do they structure their teams, and we copy that. What do they use for managing their projects? We copy that. We're copycats, but we copy the ones that are the winners, and we do that for a reason. So, I got sidetracked. So it was about
CodeStack Academy.
Yeah, CodeStack Academy. All right, so we know those gaps, and so we're like, you know what, we have to teach these gaps anyways. Let's build the thing with code schools, it's not like a university, right? University has a reputation, there's history, there's some it's prestigiousness with it. You get a UOP degree, that means something, adds value. But for code schools, there's tons of them, none in our area, but they're all over. In the Bay Area, they're only as good as the quality of graduates that they produce. And so a code school certificate is only as good as the quality of that school has a good reputation. So for us, quality is foremost. The second thing that's important to us as a public agency, as a county office, is we want to build a community of engineers in our region. So the way that we're doing that is we're providing a very affordable, low-cost school. It's an 11-month program. They go through, it's intense, all right? They're doing, the first 6 weeks, they're doing 50 hours of code. We started off with 30-something for our first cohort, we're down to 11. It's tough, but those graduates are the most prepared engineers you're gonna find anywhere, in my opinion, based off of my experience in hiring engineers.
And when you say affordable, most coding schools are $10,000 to $25,000.
Right.
What are you guys?
Well, right now it's 3,000, and the next cohort will be 4,000. And they don't.
It's a longer time period.
It's
than
longer.
Most coding schools are just like a
Yeah.
concentrated time period.
We know there's so much to learn. It's hard to teach. It's hard for them to take all this without working on projects, working on deadlines, doing the kind of things that you do in a real world scenario. That's what we're trying to prepare them for. Working in teams, understanding the whole, we call it DevOps, involved with continuous integration where we're releasing versions every 2 weeks of software. This is how the real world works in terms of coding. So we try to follow those practices, teach those practices, and make sure that they can hit the ground running wherever they get a job. But I think the more important thing that we're doing beyond the educational piece, and first of all, the cost is cheap, but the way we break up the boot camp or the academy is they pay a $40 fee to get into a workshop that basically they get a full lesson plan, they get materials, they have to build a project. If they pass that, then they can go into what we call the Code Combine, which is a 6-week program, 50 hours a week, intense coding. That's $300. If they get through that, they're in the full-blown academy. So they have opportunities to really get their feet wet, understand the process, understand what's going to be expected of them before they make this investment of $3,000 or $4,000.
It's not a money grab.
It's not a money grab. We're not doing this for. If we want to make money, we'll just keep making software because there's plenty of opportunity out there to do that, and there's projects that we turn down all the time that are good financial decisions, but we don't think can add value to our districts and to what we offer. So we're selective in that regard because it's not about the money. And so we think we could do something for the community, so we started CodeStack. But I think the most important thing with CodeStack that I'm the most proud of personally is, again, but going back to we're trying to build a community. And what I mean by that is every student that is a current student or an alum of CodeStack has unvetted access to our engineers after they leave the program. They have access to our incubator space for building their own projects, starting their own businesses. They have a support system of 70 engineers that are experts in their field, where they go to a job and they get stuck on something. They can just come back and say, "Hey guys," or go in our Slack group. We have a Slack channel where we communicate all the time, and say, "I got stuck with this problem," or "I want to build this software for this, but I need help with this." They have that resource at their disposal, and to me, that's the most important thing because we want them to come back. We want them to engage with new students. We want them to be part of what we're trying to build as a community. And to me, I think that adds more value than anything else that we're doing. And I think that's going to really help not just the county, but the city as well.
That's great. So you talk about there's these gaps that you see so many people coming into coding that they have. What do you think are some things that K-12 and even college, because I know you even get college graduates that have a computer science degree come in and have a lot of needs.
Right.
What are some gaps you think that the educational system needs to work on as tech continues to become an important part of the job market?
Right. So there's really two types of schools. There's the traditional four-year college computer science degree. And then there's these accelerated boot camps that are popping up all over the place. And some of them are good, some of them not so good. I want to say, first of all, that the most important factor in the equation of what defines a good engineer is the individual. Because I got people who have no experience in coding and end up being like top engineers. I have people that have gone to really good universities, known for software engineering in the Bay Area and other places that struggle. The individual is number one, because it really, and I probably speak for that as well. I learned everything pretty much on my own. But let's just focus on these two big areas. So for traditional four-year students, what we find is they seem to have a much better foundational understanding of concept programming related to object-oriented design, building components related to building software, just the fundamentals of programming, the inner workings of how code is processed and how it's compiled and executed. But they lack most of the modern skill sets that are used today, not just on the coding aspect and the languages, but also of how these things are structured, how applications are structured. On the code school side, they're always too accelerated. I even feel like with an 11-month program like ours, and they do 2 months of internships with us as well, with our engineering teams. I even feel with that it's too accelerated, but it's the best. Like, we can't ask for them to give up 2 years worth of their jobs, their livelihood, their income just to do this. Like, there has to be an end game, right? And so we think we've come up with an intense 11-month program that gives them all those tools. But to me, for the traditional academy that we see students come through, they have a better grasp of the more modern technologies and more modern practices, but they really lack a lot of that foundational stuff. They don't understand how databases are structured. They're always missing big pieces in their education that they can't. It takes some experience to get around that. So there's not really one over another that I pick. We focus exclusively on their skill sets. So I told the students at the School of Engineering when I talked to them at UOP in Stockton, I had not a PowerPoint, but like an animated slide, and I showed them, all right, this is you guys. It was like a race, right? And they got a head start. Like, they have a degree from a respected university in software engineering. They're ahead. But the second that somebody starts getting some internship or work experience from any other place in the world, they're going to pass them, because they're going to understand how these team development things work. They're going to understand how all the pieces that are involved with experience that is needed today. So it's one of those things where I just tell them, keep educating yourself. Key, get it? K-E-C-K-E-Y. Keep educating yourself. It was kind of like the message I was trying to tell them. Like, you have to love this stuff. If you love it, you're going to learn it. But if you keep educating yourself, you'll be okay. And the learning curve is not hard once you get in the pattern of doing it. It's part of the job. So I actually love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. Well, I have more questions, but I'm going to filter myself so that I can give the audience some opportunity. So we have several minutes now where you can ask Johnny any questions you have. It can be about some things we talked about tonight. It can be about something totally different. So any questions in the back?
Yeah, I'm just curious, if you talked earlier about startup and what that looked like when you first got into the game. And you talked about earlier leveraging people that are in higher roles that can make things happen financially. So this is a two-part question. The second part is, how did you negotiate that opportunity? What did you sell without the manifestation of the tangible being 100% in their face to be able to use it?
Are you talking about, like, for our former superintendent when he was?
Piloted, whichever program you could
Yeah.
get most information on. How did you have to have that money for that startup to get that whole process going, and then before you launched and ran that pilot, you had to have some key person who's willing to take that risk financially to back that next big step.
Right. So that would have been our superintendent at the time. So he took that risk to back us. He's a businessman. I mean, he was a successful businessman in his own right. Aside from the Cedar kind of startup that happened out of the county office. So I think that made it a much easier sell. I think he saw the drive that we had, and I think he saw the potential and what we can do, and so he was willing to subsidize us to get us off the ground. And it took us a good 4 years to finally balance our budget, to actually be in the black, as opposed to being in the red every year, because we were in the red for a number of years, but that gap got smaller and smaller. So he saw the growth, and and then it just takes one product to kind of hit it out of the park. And SACE is kind of our flagship, so that's like the one that really, really hit home, where we had excessive growth happening with with the expansion of that system. So does that answer your question as far as the risk part?
Yeah, I was just curious, when you promoted this, to have that conversation with the superintendent before he cuts the check and subsidize, what kind of things did you have to put together?
Oh, okay. So Right, so we had to put financial documents. So that was the other thing. So like, if any of you work on budget development for any of your organizations who you've worked in the public sector, you know that you have to kind of balance, you have to show all your expenditures and what they're going to be, and you have a good idea. You know how much you're getting, you know what your expenditures are going to be. So for us, we had to predict, we had to guess, and we had to say, okay, well, we think we're going to get 3 more projects in, or 3 more SELPAs on, or 3 more districts on for this. So at that rate, if we average them at 10,000 students, ADA for each of those, we'll get this much. So we had to do a lot of guessing and forecasting on what we thought we were going to bring in to create a budget.
So you're like running projections just like a startup would go into a VC.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that's really exciting. Like, here's a superintendent who was having his people project out their money in a way that was seeing where they were going to get to black.
Right.
Most superintendents don't see things that way.
And then we always were conservative on those numbers, because we know that our business office would come back if we had a shortfall. So we try to be conservative and under project. And then it's always funny when you under project and you get over, everybody's happy. But if you over project and you come up short, everybody's mad. So it's a fine line. And so we just thought, we're never going to over project, because that's just going to backfire on us. So
I think it's a good lesson, because a lot of times people go into those meetings with their projections and they want to look how good it's going to be, and then they suffer later.
In the private sector, you want to do that. So in the private sector, it's a whole different animal. Public to private. I mean, that was my experience. Like you're selling them. You have a business plan. You have revenue projections. You have all these things that you have to project to get people to buy into your product, your company. To invest. It's a much harder sell than working with one person who has the authority to make that call. And then when you're dealing with money in the private sector, people want to know everything about you. And the thing about too with investors is a little different. Like I said, venture capitalists, the experience of my partners was that they buy up 3 or 4 of the same companies, and all they need is one of them to hit. And so the one that's making the most progress, they'll take the best ideas from the other 3 and bet on that one making it. So it's just a completely different animal. And even dealing with the customers is completely different. When you're a county office calling districts, it's just a whole different mindset. It's a whole different type of discussion than cold calling, a small business and asking them to buy your product. It's night and day. And frankly, I think that was a huge factor for our success, is to be able to do that. And then just noticing how much there was lack of technology, and there still is. There still is, even in our own agency. We still have things where we do things very old school, where we're filling out NCR forms, and but it's the way of the world. It's the way it works. We're not going to go in there and overhaul it and do all this work. And a lot of times too, people will pitch us ideas, and they would say, you guys really need to build this. You can make, this could be a huge revenue stream for your department. This could be leveraged in other counties. And we're like, we always want to make sure that we're not recreating the wheel. If there's a product that exists that works, we're not going to do it. It's only when there's a missing element, there's the niche that's missing, that we'll actually jump in and give it a shot. And the good thing about it is, when you work for those of you in county, you work with your programs within your own agency. They have more or less, they're going to have money to fund some of this. If they need software and they're already out in the market looking to buy software and they can't find one, and you have the resources to build it, have them pay you. Now you have some income. It may not cover your full expense, but it's enough for them to get what they need, and it's also an opportunity for you to see if it could be sold to other agencies, other districts within your own county or beyond. So there's always wiggle room. So if somebody comes with an idea and they have startup money basically to fund it because they need it and they're going to spend money on it anyways, whether it's through you or through a vendor, and you think it's something that you can do for that price, do it and see if you can expand it. And that we've done a lot. That's been I think a really strong point for our success is we had things that we had no idea could scale and other districts would be interested in, and they happen to be that way. So
I think you can substitute curriculum, professional development, other things for software in that instance,
absolutely,
right? So
you're absolutely
if
right.
you see a need that a district or county has, and they're going to go pay someone else, usually overpay someone to do it anyway. So if you build it, you kind of get them to fund your own project, and then you can replicate it out beyond.
So not only will they overpay, but a lot of times we walked into so with SACE, there were some districts that required RFPs. We bid on 11 RFPs that we bid on to use SACE, and we didn't win a single one. We lost every single bid, and I think there's only one left. So 10 of the 11 actually came back to us a year later, 2 years later, and dropped their other vendor and wanted to do contract work with us. But how much money did they lose in that interim? And some of them were even in litigation where they said, hey, we want to do a contract, but can we just do a letter of intent, because if we write a contract, it may interfere with our litigation that we're trying to get some of that money back. So there's, and then there's other scenarios where agencies will make a commitment and there's one or two people that were 100% for that. And now everybody wants to kind of change direction. A lot of times they'll continue to put good money in behind bad money because that they were the main ones making that call, and sometimes it's hard to step back and say, yeah, I made the wrong decision. And I've seen that happen. So there's a lot of scenarios that play out in those kind of situations.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sherelle. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
It sounds like the graduates from your school are highly knowledgeable in the areas that you train them. Is there like a database or a department that if a outside startup wanted to maybe work with some of the graduates as interns and or hire them, that we could like find out students that are recently?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have that.
How would one contact your school to find out?
Yeah, so we'll get, I'll get your information and then I'll give it to we have somebody that's in charge of business partnership development. So what they'll do is they'll just contact you. You'll have an opportunity to talk to the class, talking about pitch up your ideas, talking about what you're looking for in terms of engineer, what the terms are going to be. And yeah, you're more than welcome to do that. Yeah, no problem. Yes?
About your CodeStack Academy, how is this marketed in your area? Is it done at job fairs? Is it done at the high school level? Is it done for?
All the above. Social media, we go to job fairs, we go to high school events. We were at a job ready event last time. We have little tables that we set up at some of the graduations that we've been invited to. So every kind of means of traditional marketing. I mean, we're at a lot of these places anyways. We're a county office. We're engaged with all the high schools at some capacity. We even go out and talk to students on career day, like some of the graduating seniors about paths they want to do. It's like, we service the at-risk youth, traditionally the county office does. So we service the most severely handicapped, the ones in core community, juvenile hall, alternative ed. So we run those programs, so we have access to those. So we like to do those programs as well. And I talk to some of these students and they're just like, this is like my dream job, And one student came to me at one of the alternative schools, he's troubled youth. And he said, hey, I just want to know, he's like, I want to go, we have to pick a place for our career day to go out and visit. Can I visit your site? And I was like, yeah. And then he came over, he's like, so do you guys hire people with tattoos? Because he had tattoos and gang stuff. And I'm like, yeah, look at those guys. And these guys the employees had their whole sleeves tatted up with arms. I'm like, that's not a roadblock here. It's about your commitment to the job and working as a team. That's the main thing. So.
Other questions? In the back.
For your at-risk youth, do you guys offer scholarship, or is there a foundation to help?
We have a foundation through the county office, and we are actually actively trying to find some scholarship opportunities, because that's a roadblock for a lot of students, and it sucks because the reality is, so I'm trying to find options for these kids. Like, I wish I could just let them in for free, because a lot of them really want to do this stuff, and it could be a life changer for them. So I'm trying to figure that out, but I tried to call some financial institutions that did financial aid for some of these code schools, and I called them and I'm like, hey, I noticed you guys do financial aid for this school, can we get on this stuff? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the phone with them, and then at some point in the conversation, they asked me, well, how much does your school cost? And we're like, $3,000. They laughed. They're like, we're not going to fund $3,000. We're not going to make money off that. Like, no, you're going to have to get a private loan or something. So we keep running into roadblocks because no one's going to do financial aid for $3,000. But unfortunately, some of the kids that we work with, that's a big deal, So that's a roadblock that we definitely want to try to overcome. And we're working at that. So. Yes.
Is there any talk about making an academy for one of the high schools there?
Actually, it's funny you said I forgot to mention that we are doing that right now. So we built something called Code Stack High, and so we're implementing it in our Discovery Challenge Academy. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that, but it's like a military type school. They live on premises, kids that are foster youth, troubled kids, and they really whip them into shape. And these kids are amazing. Like the kind of work that they do, the commitment, the respect that they have, They have bunkers that they stay in, and they wake up early and they run the routes and do exercise. It's incredible. Some of the kids if you listen to their stories, you'll just be crying in tears because their stories are just absolutely incredible, what they come from. So we are implementing something called Code Stack High there at that school, and then we're also doing it for our alternative ed program as well. We're starting off with 2 sites, but we have a team that's developing curriculum for high school, and it's pretty intense. So even some of the Code Stack curriculum that we do is going to be applied to that, but it's the full spectrum from getting your feet wet with coding to full-blown building mobile apps. So everything in between is what we have curriculum for, and we're writing that. And the goal for that is we could send people out to these sites to provide those, and these are accredited teachers too. So they're CT accredited teachers already, so they get units for that. We're building them to the computer science standards as well. So we have one of our folks, two people on our team are on the actual board for the Department of Ed under the developing the computer science standards. So they're on that committee. So we already know, we're very much engaged about what those requirements are going to be. And what we're trying to do is we want to build something that can be replicated outside of into our other districts, because there are districts that they're not going to want to hire one of our people. They want to use their own resources. We'll have a turnkey built out curriculum, lesson plans for those different districts that want to do their own stuff, and we'll provide support for that. So they can call us, they can get professional development for us to get them ready to train this curriculum. But the thing with computer science and coding, especially with the high school level or even below that, is you get one chance to really expose them to it, right? And so you can either do it in a way that's going to get them excited, or you could completely blow it and they never want to touch it again. So that introduction piece is critical. So we put a lot of research in that. We're going to ISTE at the end of the month, where basically all these platforms that provide coding lesson plans and things are going to be there. We're evaluating all these different products. We're talking with the teams from working with the STEM program, building out the curriculum. So it's going to be, no one's doing this. No one has this stuff. It's untapped. It's an untapped resource right now because the computer science standards are still on shaky ground. They're still figuring out how do we get students engaged in computer science, get them excited about it, but also get them credits. Everybody wants the credits. So we want to not only get them credits for their computer science standards, but we want to get them credits for other things, like we tie math into it, we tie history into it, building those apps. So it's a win-win, and we're working on that right now.
I'm trying to get my son there. He's going to venture, and he has one computer science teacher.
Yeah. So we're going to work into venture too. So that's coming.
Code Stack until his 18th, though.
I know. Well, we're on it. We're on it. So venture's right there too, because we're on the same campus. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes.
Can I ask a SAYS-related question in terms of how your department is really working with the state to navigate the barriers that currently exist in the platform and what CalPAS is expecting.
Right.
And just really wanted to know and hopeful that some of those kinks are gonna be aligned quickly.
Right.
For those of you who don't speak special education,
That's a loaded question,
this is
by
a
the way.
very important question.
That's a loaded question, so I can answer that. That could take me an hour to answer that one. But, well, you know, we represent the largest group of special education districts and LEAs in the state. So we have a very, I would say, a very proactive and engaged group that work with the state on many levels. So we've been working with them. We know those folks. We've been working with them for years and years and years. So there is a lot of, you know, there's a lot of uneasy ground about all this stuff, right? About the conversion. For those of you that know, you know, there's an old reporting system that's going away. It's being replaced by a whole new reporting system. It's complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's really two different agencies that are kind of making this stuff collaborate. So, you know, I don't really have the answers to what's the best scenario for that, other than we have teams that just communicate with them daily, and so it's just a matter of you know, finding that common ground. You know, the last reporting period was pretty shaky. There was a lot of information coming out and a lot of changes that were happening all the way up to the reporting day. Fortunately for us, the way our structure is set up, we can make those changes pretty quickly, so we can adapt to those changes. You know, and the API is going to be 100 times better. When we move to CalPADS, we just can't wait. I was nervous, but I'm really excited about this conversion. So it's going to be a lot easier than what's required for case miss. I don't think it's going to change as frequent either. So
Projected date of when we no longer have to do 30 days as amendments, so it's like the CalPAD era.
right. I have to get our case miss person to answer that question, and unfortunately she's not here. But we can get you answers to that. Let me find out about
This
that.
is a true service organization. This conversation will continue.
Yeah,
That's good. Well, I want to again thank, when we do these events, in a way we've talked about, we're not only here to talk with an educational disruptor, but in a sense to recognize an educational disruptor, right? This is there's not many people like this out there that are doing really innovative things inside of the world of education and kind of doing that fearlessly. So want to thank you not only for being here tonight and sharing with us, but also for the work that you do every day. So
Yeah,
let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
I also want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Remember that we do have information in the back on our University of Pacific programs if you're interested. Also, we have lots of food left over, and if you don't eat it, the law students will. So please take as much as you like, and thank you again for being here tonight.
Awesome. Thanks
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate
That's
it.
awesome.